Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Have you ever opened your mouth to speak English and felt like an outsider standing in your own sentence like a guest who somehow forgot the password to get in? You knew the words, every single one of them. You knew the grammar. You had practiced this exact sentence before, maybe more than once. But something inside you still whispered, "You do not belong here yet." Not really, not the way a native speaker belongs. This lesson is for English learners who want more than vocabulary. It is for your mind, your courage, and the way you walk into a room. By the end of today, that feeling will start to fade. You will stop speaking like a visitor asking for permission to enter a room. You will start speaking like someone who was already invited in and who never needed to ask twice. You already belong in this language. Say that to yourself again. You belong in this language already, not someday, not after the next course or the next book or the next year of practice. Now, exactly as you are with the accent you have and the vocabulary you have built so far. Here is something most people get backwards. They think confidence comes after fluency. Learn enough words, get enough grammar right, and one day confidence will arrive, like a gift fully formed, ready to wear. But it rarely works that way. Confidence is not the reward waiting at the end of fluency. Confidence is the room fluency grows inside of the soil it needs to take root at all. So today, we are going to do something different. We are not going to chase perfect English. We are going to build the identity of a person who already speaks with ease, who already belongs in any room they walk into, and let the language catch up to that identity. The way it always eventually does. 5 lessons. One simple shift in how you see yourself starting from this very moment. Stay until the end, because the way you see yourself right now is about to change, even if only slightly, even if it takes a few more days to fully settle in. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Identity comes first. There is an old idea that most people carry without ever questioning it. The idea that you must become fluent first and confident second. Learn the language, then earn the right to feel sure of yourself, like confidence is a prize waiting at the far end of a long exam. But the truth runs the other way. Psychologists who study lasting change have noticed something simple. People do not transform by changing one habit at a time. They transform by changing who they believe they are. A person who decides, "I am someone who exercises," will find it easier to go for a run than a person who is simply trying to exercise more because the decision comes first and the action follows naturally behind it. The habit follows the identity, not the other way around. The same is true for how you speak English. If you wait to feel like a confident speaker, you will wait for a long time because confidence rarely announces itself first. It rarely arrives quietly one morning and tells you that you are ready now. But if you decide right now today that you are someone who speaks English, not someone who is still learning, to maybe one day speak it, something in your shoulders changes. Something in your breathing changes. The words still need practice. Yes, the grammar still needs time. But the person saying them is already different, standing a little taller before a single sentence has even left their mouth. You don't act your way into a new identity. You speak your way into one. Think about the last time you hesitated before a sentence. Maybe it was ordering food, or answering in a meeting, or texting someone back in English instead of switching to your first language because it felt safer, more familiar, less likely to expose you. In that moment, you were not failing at English. You were simply still introducing yourself as a beginner, even if you were not one anymore, even if you had not been one for years. Try this instead. Before you speak today in your own head, say one sentence to yourself. I am someone who speaks English, not perfectly, not without accent, but fully and without apologizing for it. That sentence will not make every word come out right. Nothing can promise that, and nothing needs to. But it will change the posture you carry into the sentence, the angle of your shoulders, the steadiness of your voice. And posture, as you will see in a few minutes, matters more than most people think. For now, just hold on to this. The identity comes first. The fluency follows behind it, like a student following a teacher who already knows where they are going, trusting the path even before every step is clear. Lesson 2: mistakes are proof you showed up. A young exchange student once sat in the back of a university classroom 3,000 miles from home. The seats were always cold in the morning, and the professor's chalk made a small, steady sound against the board. Every week, the professor asked questions, and every week, this student knew the answer. She had it ready in her mind, word for word, sentence already built, but she never raised her hand. Why? Because she was afraid the sentence would come out wrong. A wrong verb tense. A missing word. A small mistake that everyone in the room would notice, and she would have to sit there red-faced while it hung in the air a second too long. So she stayed quiet, week after week. She told herself she was simply being careful, simply waiting for the right moment, the right level of certainty. But the right moment never seemed to arrive on its own until one day she decided to try something different. Her hand went up before her mind had fully agreed to it. She spoke it anyway, mistakes, and all her voice a little unsteady at first. The professor nodded, understood the point completely, and moved on to the next question, like nothing unusual had happened. Nothing unusual had happened. That was the secret she had been missing the entire time. The room had not stopped. No one had laughed. The mistake she had feared for months turned out to be smaller than the silence she had been choosing instead. Every mistake you make in English is proof that you showed up. Think about what a mistake actually is. It is not evidence that you are behind. It is evidence that you opened your mouth instead of staying silent. It is evidence that you tried a sentence you were not 100% sure of, which means you are stretching past where you were comfortable. That stretching is exactly how every fluent speaker became fluent, not by waiting until they were sure, by speaking before they were sure, again and again, until sure eventually caught up. Here is the dichotomy worth remembering. There is the version of you that speaks only when certain, who rehearses every sentence 3 times before risking it out loud. And there is the version of you that speaks in order to find out, who treats every conversation as practice rather than a test with a passing grade. The first version stays safe and stays exactly where they are year after year with the same careful sentences they have always used. The second version makes mistakes in public, feels a little uncomfortable sometimes, and grows a little more with every single one until the discomfort itself starts to feel familiar instead of frightening. By the end of that semester, the exchange student we mentioned was one of the most talkative people in her class, not because her English became perfect. It did not need to. She simply stopped treating her mistakes as something to hide and started treating them as something to walk through, one sentence at a time, one raised hand at a time. Your mistakes are not the wall between you and confidence. They are the steps. Lesson 3: borrow the posture before you feel it. Stand up straight for a second wherever you are. Shoulders back, chin level. Now imagine speaking your next English sentence from that position instead of shrinking into it like you are trying to take up less space in the room. Notice anything. Most people, without realizing it, physically shrink when they speak a second language. Shoulders curl in. Voice drops half a register. Eyes look down at the floor or at their own hands instead of at the person they are talking to. The body apologizes before the mouth even opens, long before a single word has actually gone wrong. There is something strange worth noticing here. Confidence is not only a feeling you wait for, it is also a posture you can choose before the feeling arrives. The same way you can choose to walk into a room with your head up, even on a day you do not feel particularly brave. There is a well-known actor and businessman who moved to the United States as a young man with a heavy accent and limited English. He could have waited until his pronunciation was flawless before stepping in front of cameras or speaking publicly. Instead, he kept standing tall, kept speaking, kept showing up in rooms where his accent was the loudest thing about him. Over time, the accent stayed, but it stopped being a problem. It became part of his voice, something audiences came to recognize instantly instead of something he needed to hide. Stand like you belong, and the belonging will catch up to the standing. This works in smaller rooms too. An office worker new to an international team used to dread speaking up in meetings. Every time she had an idea, she would translate it twice in her head, worry about a possible mistake, watch the conversation move on without her, and let the moment pass in silence again and again, until silence became her default setting. Eventually, she tried something small. Before each meeting, she simply sat up straight, planted both feet on the floor, took one slow breath, reminded herself that no one else in the room had a perfect accent either, and told herself one sentence: I have something worth saying. She still made mistakes, sometimes small slips in tense or word order. But people started listening more, leaning in slightly when she spoke, not because her grammar changed overnight, but because her posture stopped apologizing for her before she had even said a word. So the choice sits right in front of you: apologizing for your accent shrinking before you even speak, letting your shoulders carry the doubt your mouth has not even voiced yet, or owning your accent as part of your voice and letting your posture say before any sentence does I am here and I have something to say. Your body sends a message before your words do. Today, let it send the right one. If this is helping you see yourself a little differently, already let me know in the comments. I read every one of them. Lesson 4: Win the inner conversation. First, before any sentence reaches your mouth, it has already happened, once quietly inside your head, in a space no one else can see or hear. For many people speaking a new language, that inner moment is a small battlefield. You think a thought in your first language. You pause. You translate it word by word, checking each piece before you let it out, the way you might check your pockets twice before leaving the house. By the time the sentence is ready, the conversation has already moved on, or your confidence has already leaked out through the gap, and you say something shorter and safer instead of what you actually meant. There was a young immigrant new to her country, new to its language, who lived inside that gap for almost a year. Every sentence in English was first a sentence in her first language, carried across a long bridge in her mind before it could arrive anywhere useful. She was exhausted by the end of most days, not from the language itself, but from translating her entire life twice all the time. Every grocery list and every small joke and every difficult conversation passing through that same long bridge. Something shifted when she stopped trying to translate and started trying to simply think. Small thoughts first. What do I want? What do I need right now? Thinking them directly in English without the detour through her first language. It felt strange at first, like walking with a slightly different rhythm, slightly off balance, like wearing shoes that almost fit, but not quite. But slowly, the bridge got shorter. Some days there was no bridge at all, just the thought already in English, already hers arriving the moment she needed it. The first conversation you must win is the one inside your own head. If the voice in your mind keeps saying, you might say this wrong, you will carry that doubt into every sentence that follows, and people will hear the hesitation even if they cannot name it. But if the voice in your mind says, I have something to say, and I am going to say it, the sentence that follows will sound different too, even with the exact same words, the exact same accent, the exact same small grammar slips. You belong in this language already, not just out loud. In there first, in the quiet space before the words arrive, where no one is grading you and nothing is being recorded. Try this tonight before you fall asleep. Pick one small thought, anything at all, and think it directly in English without translating, without checking it twice. Let it be imperfect. Let it be yours completely and without apology. Lesson 5. Repetition becomes identity. There is a woman who grew up speaking 2 languages at home and carried her accent into every room of her adult life. Interviews, stages, cameras pointed straight at her face lights, bright enough to make anyone forget their own name. Early on, she would catch herself softening certain sounds, trying to sand down the edges of her own voice, hoping no one would notice where she came from, hoping the accent would simply fade if she worked at it long enough. At some point, she stopped sanding it down. She kept speaking exactly the way she spoke. Same rhythm, same accent, same voice that once made her nervous to use in public, the same voice she used to lower when she felt eyes on her. She said the words anyway, over and over, in rooms big and small, in front of cameras, and in front of no one at all, until something quiet happened. The accent did not disappear, but it stopped feeling like a flaw she was hiding. It became simply how she sounded. Hers and no one else's, unmistakable the moment she opened her mouth. That is what repetition actually does. It does not just teach your mouth new words. It teaches your mind a new identity, slowly the way water reshapes stone without either of them noticing the moment it happens. Do it enough times, and the thing you once had to force yourself to do becomes the thing you simply do. Standing tall before you speak. Saying the imperfect sentence instead of swallowing it. Thinking directly in English instead of translating twice instead of checking every word against an old habit of doubt. None of these feel natural the first time. They feel borrowed, slightly uncomfortable, like clothes that are not quite yours, yet still smelling faintly of the store. But repeat them again and again in real conversations, in real rooms, with real mistakes scattered through every single one mistakes that used to feel enormous and now barely register. And one day, without announcing itself, the discomfort quietly leaves. What is left is simply you speaking without the performance underneath it, without the constant inner audit of every sound you make. You are not pretending anymore once you've done it enough times. This is the moment So many people miss waiting for confidence to arrive before they begin checking the weather for a storm that was never actually coming. But confidence was never going to knock on the door first. It was always going to walk in behind you quietly after you had already started speaking like someone who belonged, after you had already done the work of showing up sentence after imperfect sentence, week after week, long before anyone applauded any of it. You belong in this language. You have been saying it since the beginning of this lesson. Now it is time to actually believe it, not as a hopeful phrase, but as something closer to facts. Something you carry with you the next time you open your mouth in a room full of strangers. This is where you already stand in this language right now. Let that settle for a moment before we close. Let's bring it all together. You learned that identity comes before fluency, and that deciding who you are changes how you speak before your grammar ever catches up. Every mistake you discovered is not a failure, but proof that you showed up and tried the sentence anyway. Your posture, it turns out, can carry confidence into a room before your feelings do. The most important conversation, you now know, happens quietly inside your own head long before any word reaches your mouth. And repetition, more than anything else, is how a borrowed habit slowly becomes who you actually are. None of this requires perfect English. It never did. It requires a decision made today and remade again tomorrow, and probably the day after that too, that you are someone who speaks, not someone waiting for permission to start. You already belong in this language. Keep practicing listening, keep speaking, and your confidence will keep growing with every English learner who refuses to wait. So here is a question for you, something worth sitting with for a moment. What is one English sentence you have been afraid to say out loud, the one you have rehearsed in your head a dozen times but never actually spoken? Write it in the comments below exactly as it is, mistakes and all. And then somewhere today in a real room with a real person, say it anyway. Thank you for spending this time with me today, wherever you are watching from. If today's lesson shifted something small in how you see yourself, that shift is worth more than any perfect sentence ever could be. I will see you in the next lesson.